Oh, it's a happy Monday, everyone. You're in great company. I'm Rae Bonney, and this week I have something rather special in store. My show is all about people recognising that it really is okay to not be okay, and usually followed closely by the divine Ken Lyons and his show, Here's Health. But this week we've decided to buddy up and co-host the next 2 hours together. So, Ken, do you think we can talk about something for the next almost 2 hours and get through?
I've never known a good afternoon, Rae, by the way.
Yeah,
good afternoon, listeners. I don't think we'll have any trouble at all, particularly since we have somebody very special with us today.
We can't steal all the surprises, Ken, because
Not
I
gonna
was
say
about
another
to
word.
say there is actually a real reason that Ken and I have united, and that's to celebrate the life and times of a mutual friend
May
of
we
ours.
have a happy life together.
Now, this is a very abridged version of this person's rap sheet, and I wonder if you can guess who it is. Okay, here we go. Best known as 3AW's Mann About Town, he plays the part of roving reporter and radio personality for 4 decades, has held various roles within 3AW, including production manager, creative director, and promotions and marketing manager. With a vast experience in the areas of hosting, comparing corporate events, he's also a board member of the production company. In addition to his work within the entertainment industry, other appointments include immediate past chairman, the Order of Australia Association chairman, Ministerial Small Business Advisory Council chairman, Victoria Police Blue Ribbon Day, Community Council, and chairman Mount Macedon Memorial Cross Reserve Committee of Management. He is a member of the Queen Victoria Market Board, Chisholm Institute Board, and Connected Communities Melbourne Board. And I know that there's actually more, but if you haven't guessed already, perhaps the voice will give it away. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Raylene and Ken. It's a pleasure to be here in beautiful Box Hill on this wonderful Monday afternoon. The weather is just perfect. I'm not a great person in the heat, but I thought, no, I'll just take my time coming out here. Managed to park under a tree. It won't be shady by the time I get back, but an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for that lovely introduction. Unnecessary.
Oh, gosh, I'm exhausted by even just reading it out. But so if you haven't guessed, we are so
Can I
privileged.
ring through and win the prize?
You can. What is the... Oh, yes, okay, what is the prize?
No, look, on second thoughts, I just can't imagine who it is.
David Mann, Mann About
Of
Town.
course.
And I'm sitting with a legend, Ken Lyons. I mean,
Yes.
absolutely. I'm looking at Ken now, and I'm not being funny or flippant, but if someone was to say, you've met this gentleman, I go, yes, and he's been in radio for a long time, and now he's doing wonderful community radio out at 94.1 FM, 3WBC. How old is he? I'd say Ken would have to be in his probably realistically early to mid 70s. And I said to Raylene, I said, Ken's probably getting closer to 80. Then Raylene actually told me, and I can't believe it, Ken. So in advance for your magnificent contribution to the community for right now, here and now, but also your past history involved with many, many radio personalities and stations. Well done. We don't use the term too often, living legend, but when you get to Ken's age, and you're looking like Ken, you're doing pretty well.
Thank you so much. You've blown my cover. See, a lot of the young, particularly the beautiful young girls that listen, they think I'm, around about 50, 48, 50, because they can't see me.
They do.
Oh, haven't you got Weber vision here?
Oh,
See that camera
dare
over
not
the
have
corner?
it. I'd have to resign. Thank you, David. That's very nice of me to say that.
No, but it's very true, David. He is a massive contributor, not only here at 3WBC, but in the community at large. He is Ken at large, and very much like your good self, very, very humble and very, very passionate about doing great things in the community for others. And, thank goodness his genetics are very good and very solid.
Yes, I'm still holding.
Well, Raylene, you're giving praise to everybody else, but you won't chest beat, but I will. But you have respect for Ken for his years and for his life skills, but also I know it goes both ways, because what you're doing for the community, and I know the show's a little different today, but normally you can hear a great hour of mental health and well-being, and if life's not good, how you can help and how you can help others. And the other day I spoke to you, you were at an airport, and you were travelling back from somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and somewhere else, and you're on the road, and it's not easy. The field that you're in is not an easy one, and all your listeners know They know, all about Beyond Blue. They know all about the many other organisations that are here today as relevant, as important and needed for the men and women. I'm not talking any age group or any nationality or any religion. Everyone who needs a little bit of a helping hand or a kind word or, in fact, a program in place. So what you do, because you've got the family as well, you've got to look after, but as a broadcaster and as a communicator in the mental health and wellness field, I say well done to you, Rae Bonney.
Thank you very much, David Mann. Coming from you, that means a lot. And
I could say here without going any further, but I will say this too. You are an inspiration to so many people. Rae and I, I'm like David. I mean, we could go on talking about this. The thing is, you don't talk about it only to the people that need it, and I think that's a fantastic thing to do. You really are special.
oh, thank you. This was hardly the purpose of the show, but I'll take it all. Thank you very much. And for listeners who are a little bit confused, my real name is actually Raylene, as David will continue to use throughout the show. So that's who he's referring to me when he says Raylene, but he doesn't say it like that.
Affectionately known as Rae.
Yes, that's right.
To us in here.
Well, that's a really nice way to start the show, and I think it certainly does highlight the beauty of human beings getting together, and we are looking at 3 generations of people here. And we've all known each other for a long time for different reasons, and I think that again just demonstrates how connections that are strong remain strong, and for the right reasons as well. And I think we're all here because we care about others and doing good for others, but also doing good for ourselves as well. That's really important. So David, you and I met when I was, I think, 21 years of age, and I was working in the media for yacht racing here in Victoria with the great Mike Sabey.
Remember it very, very well.
And you were very, very supportive of me because we were doing, in between yacht racing seasons, we would write books, and we wrote the first guide to Melbourne's best kept secrets, which was a cafe guide. And we also wrote the first bike paths book as well, which were both sponsored by 3AW.
They were ahead of their time, Raylene, and what happened was Mike Sabey, a very good events person, but loved his yachting, absolutely, and but a good journalist too, and so he had this idea of Melbourne's best kept secrets, and seeing that 3AW is still, talking Melbourne, we were very Melbourne focused, and I said, this will be a good idea, so he came in with a draft, and I said, we'll support that, not financially, but the radio station's commodity is airtime. So, it's not necessarily always his cash or you give us cash. It's if there's a good joint venture. And you don't make a lot of money out of writing books. So the biggest thing you need is distribution. I mean, these days it's all Kindle, so it's online. But I'm pleased to say the bookstores are coming back. But with the Best Kept Secrets, it was really, really good. And we managed to get the listeners to know where they could buy it. And that did very well. And then Melbourne's bike paths, and once again, ahead of your time, because even today, listening to AW, they're talking about bicycles and the bike paths and the things happening with all the infrastructure in Melbourne. And the bike network is now massive.
Yes,
But here
I actually had breakfast with Craig Richards the other day from Bicycle Network, the CEO there.
Yeah.
And it has changed astronomically.
And here it was so long ago that you were talking about bike paths, and people go, a bike path?
I know, bikes. I was with Rae when we gave away a bike, weren't we, together?
Yes, with one of your mates, actually, David Mann, Darren Hinch, for the
Yeah.
Variety Club.
Variety, the children's charity. Hello, yes. Janet Connolly, if you're listening, the chief executive there. But it was terrific, these books, and that's how Raylene and I met, and Mike Sabey. And it became a bit of a deal that radio stations could actually promote books and then promote records in those days. Even if you were not playing music, AW wasn't playing music, but we put a couple of records into the gold status, and then our dear departed Keith McGowan, he made people like Andre Rieu, who nobody had ever heard of. I think Mike Brady's up there, Kazali, Keith McGowan was one of the first people to play it. And so, it's the power of radio.
And he's still playing it, David.
Still playing, yeah. Mike says it's his superannuation.
Oh, I tell you what, still makes me cry, that song. Always brings a tear to my eye.
Didn't he do a good job of the
Yes.
grand final? I'm a big rap for Mike Brady. He was Victorian of the Year. A lot of people forgot that. Victorian of the Year for this year, but a great entertainer, great radio personality, great entertainer, and has done so many things in life. And once again, with the relevance to this program, it hasn't always been easy. People think, oh, yes, there's Mike Brady, superstar, singer, songwriter.
Yes.
No, Mike had some very difficult times.
Well, typical of the music industry, though, isn't it?
It is.
Tough industry.
You're up there.
I think it's typical of any industry, really. And we will be talking about industry and the entertainment industry in more detail during the show. But it's good to remind people that we do focus on industries and say the hospitality industry is hard. Yes, it is. Entertainment is hard. So is the legal fraternity, very hard. So it's what you do with it that's really important, I think.
Well, of course, we do, Rae and I do a health show, totally different types of health. But the thing is that music is a wonderful therapy.
Absolutely.
And so people who are suffering various problems, particularly with mental health, they've found music to be a wonderful thing to help
Well,
them
do you know,
along.
I was interviewed whilst I was in Sydney recently on a program called Dad's on Air, and it's all about dads. And I was talking about men's issues, as I do every day, and they asked me to choose 2 songs that mean something, and I did. And the person who was interviewing me didn't know the reason that I'd chosen the songs, and he asked me about my last song, which is Angel by Sarah McLachlan, and it means something to me because it's a song that actually kept me alive for many, many years when I was very, very mentally unwell. And he was looking at me from across the panel, and when we finished the show, he had tears in his eyes. He said, I actually wasn't expecting that. And we got to talk about it, yeah.
It's something that relates to exactly what both of you have said. Barry Manilow, who this will show how old I am. People say, a bit daggy, but he's a fantastic entertainer, absolutely brilliant, still singing and singing well. But he said if more young people were involved in music, number one, playing an instrument, or number 2, singing, it would be a better world. And what he does at his concerts around the world, if you've got a broken violin or a saxophone that's got a dent in it, or a clarinet that's missing a few of the parts or something, you can donate a broken instrument and he will have it repaired, then donate it to children in need who perhaps will pick up on the idea of playing a musical instrument or sing. And he said to be a better world. And he's so right. And the song that I picked up from Barry Manilow that I've played is I Made It Through the Night. And if you listen to the words in that song, it's just amazing. And I think he's been through it. Everybody's been through something. But I Made It Through the Night by Barry Manilow, a lovely, lovely song. With words, you can hear what he's singing.
And the words are very important. We do something on my program where one sings and the other speaks the words.
Oh.
And we found that when you speak the words, people enjoy it because they don't really hear the words properly when it's being sung, particularly if there's an orchestra behind it. So when you hear the real words as like a poem, beautiful.
Our guest, best known as 3AW's Mann About Town, needs 2 people to contain his bursting repertoire of experience.
Absolutely.
Now, David, we talked about philosophy just when we were coming off air. I'm peering at you through the mics here. I can just see a little bit of you. Now, your philosophy, which we see a lot online, goes, if you have your health, happiness, friendship, and a little luck on your side, don't ever take it for granted.
So true. Yes,
Where does that come from?
Oh, it's just something that I always said, and I occasionally put it in a note. I still write notes or send letters. I'm one of the old-fashioned people, but I just think it's so true. Your health is obviously the priority because part of the reason for your show is to do with health.
Yes.
So your health, your friendship, and look, I think if you've got 4 or 5 really, really close friends, you're doing well. People say acquaintances. We've all got lots of acquaintances, but I've got 4 or 5 friends I know I could ring and say, look, I need some help on this, or what's your opinion, or whatever the case, and they'll always be there for you, and I'll always be there for them. And then you've got your extended friendship. A little bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time, or meeting the right person, or being able to to be approached to do something, whether it's a board, a trust, or a foundation, and there's some luck there that they've found you or you've found them. So your luck, your health, your happiness. I think the happiness, if you put the trifecta of the others together, the happiness comes. But I don't know, too many people take too many things for granted these days. It annoys me sometimes where people just, they're continually negative or complaining or whatever. Sure, there's a lot of things that are not right in the world. Absolutely, but it's all across the world. But if you think about what we've been privileged to have in Australia, the way of life, and there's so many good things still happening, and so many good people. I mean, I've had the privilege of travelling a lot across the world, and I've met some amazing people in particularly America. And but when I talk on Australia Day or days about people who've inspired me, I have probably my 5, 6, 7, 8 people I talk about. They're all Australian. They're all people who have brought something into my life that I've learnt from or developed. And I go, these people, anywhere in the world, you'd go, wow, networking with somebody, and you'd go, how good's that?
Yes.
I've got a couple of things. One of them, I believe, good things happen to good people.
Yes.
Do you think about that?
Yeah. I hear that a lot, and I think it's true. And bad things happen to good people too. Of course. Yeah. I was listening to Neil Mitchell driving out here, and Neil's an unbelievable journalist, unbelievable radio personality. But he has to interview good people who bad things have happened to. And this morning there were three things that I can think of right now, all good people who have had dreadful things in life happen to them.
I heard that, and it was very sad.
But sometimes we can change the narrative around a little bit and just call it things have happened to people, because sometimes when things don't turn out like we planned, we call them bad things and we don't see the silver lining in it. And I know what you're talking about. I mean, the absolute other end of the scale of tragedy, that's something else. But, quite often we're very seduced at, were you saying, the negativity that, the train doesn't turn up. Isn't that the worst thing? No, in fact, it's not. It gives you time to reflect, gives you time to chat to somebody, that kind of stuff, just changing it around. And when you were talking about health, happiness and friendship, it made me think about, being so lucky to meet Ken. I mean, I'm clearly lucky to have met you, but, most recently in the last few years, it was just the stroke of luck that I wrote a note to John Farmer, and it was passed on to Ken, and that's how we met. And, he very quickly became a very, very important person in my life. And every day it just gets stronger, doesn't it? I just annoy you a lot. And
I know we do. You know very well.
Actually, Ken, I'll pose a question to you.
Sure.
Tell me something we don't know about Rae Bonney.
Something we don't know about her.
The listeners probably think they know Raylene. They've listened, and they
probably didn't know my name was Raylene. There's the first one.
There's the first thing.
I think I had heard it before. I think one of the family that I met probably called you that.
Oh, okay, yes.
Is there somebody in your family that calls
Yes.
you Raylene?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I have heard that. And I thought, who's this Raylene? Look, can I think of something that people wouldn't know that I would know about Raylene? And that is that she's a very honest person in her personality. She doesn't hide anything. I know she's laughing, but no, I mean that. What you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And people think maybe this is a front. When she's in front of the microphone, she perhaps exudes a different personality, but I know her very well. And I would say, yes, I think you are an honest person in the way you deal with life.
That's a lovely one. Now, right of reply, Raylene, something we don't know about the great Ken?
Oh, do you know, there's quite a lot. I think some of it I probably wouldn't say on air.
Do you mind if I go out for a minute?
Just consult your lawyer.
I wouldn't say on air. However, because Ken has confided in me a lot of personal things. But I think most people might not know that Ken and his wife Jill owned a B&B.
Oh.
Yes.
I was bigger than that.
Well, it was a whole complex. If you imagine, have you ever seen the movie Dirty Dancing?
Yes.
So, where the Callermans, that whole resort, I think it was something like that.
Oh.
It was big.
Very big.
I didn't know that.
Well, I can say because it doesn't exist anymore, but it was the Mountain Grand.
Ken burnt it down for insurance purposes.
Don't say
That's something that nobody else knows. Even the insurance company. Sorry.
Don't even joke about that.
No, please don't.
What was it called?
The Mountain Grand Guest House in Warburton. It was next to the chalet, and it was just as big. We had that for about 7 or 8 years. It did burn down, but I tell you, that was a tragedy for us because it was really, really going so well. We entertained every year. We had the Hawthorn Football Club up there.
Well, you will not believe it. It must be fate. 6 degrees of separation. I'm looking right at Ken now, and I'll look for the expression on his face. My dear parents, Sid and Val Mann, that's where they had their honeymoon.
Isn't that amazing? Well, I tell you what.
But it must have been going for a long time because their
100
honeymoon
years.
was in 1953.
Well, I had my honeymoon there, not at the Mountain Grand, but at the chalet in Warburton in 1949.
Yeah.
So it was the place to be for honeymoons.
Yeah, that's where they had
nobody
it.
thought there was no such thing as going north, no such thing as, the Gold Coast and all that. No, it was Warburton.
See, we're creating memories here. We're not just reflecting. We're just creating them as we go
I
along.
couldn't believe when you were saying, I thought you were going to say, somewhere at Portsea or
No.
Torquay or, up at Kyneton or
Beautiful
somewhere.
Warburton.
And when you said it, I think, this couldn't be. This couldn't be, and there it is.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, it is wonderful. And we had a great
Yeah.
time. We were booked out the whole time because we did it like the old-fashioned guest houses, entertained them, did everything, took them on trips and 3 meals. When I think of what we charged back in the 70s, I think, 3 meals a day, including morning and afternoon tea and supper.
Would have been about $40 a head.
Something like that.
What?
Some ridiculous amount of money.
What, does that include the accommodation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
$40 for all that.
Yeah, it would have in the
Gee.
70s.
Might have been a bit more than 40 bucks.
The reason I asked the question is I did it
Yes.
yesterday on stage. I had the honour and pleasure of emceeing the MFB Long Service and Good Conduct Awards at the members' dining room at the MCG. Beautiful facility, beautiful day too. You look straight out over the ground.
Isn't that
But there were 300 or 400 people there, and it was celebrating men and women of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade for long service and good conduct. The first award I gave out was a gentleman who is serving 50 years in the MFB. 50 years. He's stationed at Northcote now, and he's still an operational firefighter.
Good Lord.
Ian Grinley's his name, and I looked at him. He's like you, Ken, just fit, mentally alert, fit as anything, still working, still the officer on the fire truck, and, well, no, I won't say his age, but work it out. If he's 50 years in the job,
Yeah.
and he joined when he was in his very, very late teens. So quite amazing. But
Yes.
I posed the question to 2 other brothers up on stage who I was interviewing. I said, tell something you don't know about Ian or something you don't know about the other one. And all of a sudden this audience, and he said, guess what? My brother's never had a mobile phone. And the whole place just looked, all the kids and everyone, somebody without a mobile phone. And I said, you'd probably have a fantastic life because you'd spend time communicating with your voice and with the written word, and you wouldn't spend half of it doing this. And he looked at me and said, you're right. I thought it was amazing. And I said, well done.
Well, that's coming from a man who didn't acquire a mobile phone until relatively recently.
I haven't got a mobile phone on me now. I don't carry a phone. My mobile phone is to do Man About Town, so I talk on it and then I hang up.
But even then, you used to operate without it.
Yeah. I'm a negative. Here we go. Man About Town, David Mann, almost computer illiterate. So,
But
not
that's when-
proud to say that, but I've had a lot of great people who I surround around me, and they're good with the techo stuff.
Yes, and that's how you get across so much is you delegate, and also I think cutting corners is an amazing thing. If you can get out of doing a whole heap of stuff that doesn't need to be done, allows you to do all of the great things that we're doing.
And people, they accept it because I've had the honour of chairing boards. One business was $140 million business. And when I went from being a board member to deputy chair to chairman, I said, you know what, I'm not a person with a computer. And they went, that's fine. We pay people to do all that stuff. We want you running the business. So.
Well, Now, while we're on things that you've been involved with, I wanted to ask you, because you were or are a director of the Queen Victoria Market. Are you still involved in that?
Very much so, Ken. Living.
So what is happening to that market?
Okay, the redevelopment will take place, and it will bring the market up to, first of all, some basic standards. There's a lot of the traders don't have power, don't have water, don't have shelter. The toilets are, I'll say it, they're totally inadequate for the 10 million people a year who go there. And even, each week when I'm there, I see people thinking they're sensor taps, and they're the old toilets where you have to put your knee on a thing underneath to get the water out. And you can see a lot of our international visitors going, oh, really? And there's things now that need to be looked at. You can't have a market with people and forklifts moving around. You can't have a market where there's miles and miles and miles of the boxes or the rubbish or whatever. Yeah. So what will happen, the culture, the history, the actual look of the market will stay the same. The sheds will come down and be refurbished and go up again. A lot of people said, oh, you're pulling the sheds down. Yes, we are. We're going to refurbish them, put them up. Then there'll be some underground facilities for a lot of the handling of goods and the recycling.
Isn't there a cemetery under?
There is. There's 7,000 graves.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So you can't touch that area. Where the car park is now, there are 7,000 graves under there, so that you couldn't put a tent peg into that because of, obviously the respect for those that are buried there. Yeah. So that area has a car park, and I thought, well, that's not very respectful, driving thousands of cars on top of the remains of generations gone by. So that will become a mainly grassed area where people can go and actually sit and enjoy the produce, the fresh produce they buy, and we can have events out there. The sheds A, B, C, D, and some other areas underneath there'll be a lot of infrastructure that'll keep all of these things of an operational market under there. And also, it will become far more flexible because at the moment, people go, wow, night market, winter night market, summer night market. Some nights we have up to 40,000 people.
Wow.
And people go, wow. And the reason being is Ken's working during the day, Raylane's working during the day, David's working during the day.
Yes.
There are so many people live so close to the market who simply want to go out and have a glass of wine, something to eat, and then buy some really nice products. And so the night markets have proved so successful, they will continue. And then the opening hours, the traders now, we have a terrific committee, the Traders Representative Council. And look, change is challenging. Lots of people are worried. And so, they should be, because it's their business. There's 700 plus small businesses in the one place, and it's their livelihood. Now, some of them have accepted that change will take place and they're moving with it. Others say, I don't want it to happen. If I had to say something, has communication been perfect from all?
That was my next question, actually. How
all people? No, because it's so involved. There's the landlord is the Melbourne City Council, and the Lord Mayor, the Honourable Robert Doyle. This is the biggest project. This is it for the Melbourne City Council. There's lots of other things happening, but this is the big project. So they're not going to get it wrong. Then you've got the councillors. Then you've got the executive team. So you've got all these different people you've got to deal with. Then you've got the traders. Then you've got the Queen Victoria Market Board, which I sit on. Then you've got our executive and our staff. But the one word I keep reminding them of is customer.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Customer is the most important person. Look, if the chairman, Paul Guira, who Raylene has interviewed, was sitting here, and the Honourable Robert Doyle, Lord Mayor, was sitting there, I'd say, yes, you're important, but the most important person is
the customer.
The customer. So to make it
always important in any business.
To make it a better experience for the customer, and we haven't tapped some of the markets. We really haven't tapped, and the markets, I mean, the Asian market. The delegations go regularly from the state government to all parts of Asia. Queen Victoria Market has never had a representative. The Penguins are represented, the Great Ocean Road's represented, Yarra Valley's represented, Eureka Skydeck's represented, Puffing Billy's represented. They've never tapped into it, and so many of our Asian friends from all across Asia are starting to come there. The cruise ships now. Next year is a massive market for the cruise ships, but you've got to provide spaces for the coaches. You've got to provide some incentives for them to come there. So there's a whole lot of things happening. And
I think also, just before we go to the next break, is we're talking about change. And quite often we're expected to get excited about change, a new Queen Vic market. How exciting is that? However, the way that does affect people at all of the levels that you just described can sometimes not feel like that. And I think we should be respectful that change isn't always good for people, and how we communicate change and how we engage in change. I think it's really, really important that we just, for those of us who love it, just not to run to the end point, remembering that there's others around us that are.
I'm not a great one for change myself. I don't
Really?
take to change.
No, because you just packed up your family one day and quit your business and moved them to the UK. So, yeah, not a change person at all.
On Queen Victoria Market, one thing I must say in a public sense as we're broadcasting is one man I never, ever want forgotten. And this is where you talk about people. There is a man, Mr. Munro, who's with us today. He's very senior in years. Mr. Munro owned the building on the corner of Queen and Therry Street, all the way down there. And on the 8th of October, 3 years ago now, final bids closed. And the 8th of October, I know because my birthday, and I was terrified of what was going to happen. Mr. Munro took a bid that was considerably lower than the bids offered by some of the consortiums. The bid that he took was the bid by the Melbourne City Council, who put in a bid, but it was not the number one bid. He sacrificed millions and millions and millions of dollars to protect the market. So there's not a supermarket being built there. There's not a threat to the market. The Melbourne City Council own it. There'll be a building. There'll be affordable housing. There'll be, hopefully, arts precinct and maybe even a theatre one day. But Mr. Munro, from the day that I leave this planet, I hope that his name is acknowledged, Munro Square, Munro Lane, Munro something, because without him, we may not have a Queen Victoria Market.
Well, thank you, Mr. Munro. That is, again, another demonstration of the human spirit and compassion around protecting what, for many, many people, is very important, especially in Melbourne. And you are with Rae Bonney and Ken Lyons, joined in the studio today by media personality David Mann About Town, who gets himself around so much more than a town, don't you?
I was a Box Hill boy. It's lovely being here.
Of course.
And I must say to the City of Whitehorse, the magnificent town hall, because I grew up with the White Horse. I was a Box Hill North boy, went to Carrymuir State School, went to Blackburn High School, and so coming out here, it's
like
just
coming home.
It is, and I sort of sat in the car. I like to get here early, not to be late, and I think the whole of the world passed me by, all nationalities, all people, and a very multicultural, linguistically diverse community. But people just enjoying it, and I was looking at the train lines at the back here. But then I walked up, and there's beautiful trees.
Does it surprise you to see the high-rise apartments?
Well, there were no high-rise apartments. I mean, I think the biggest high-rise was about 2-storey in Whitehorse Road, but now obviously a lot of student accommodation too, and look, that's progress. Things happen.
It's great. I think it's great.
They amaze me how they get them up. I often wonder how deep do they have to go to do a foundation.
Not deep enough in my estimation.
Building.
Well, Ken, you and I think the same, because this happened, and I can tell you the exact time if somebody wants to get the video footage, because there's a camera everywhere in Melbourne. I parked at Queen Victoria Market last Friday morning at 10 o'clock. I walked across the pedestrian crossing at Franklin Street to go to a meeting in Queen Street. And the builders were all there. They're building a huge high-rise, and maybe because it was, start of the weekend, they were having a sausage sizzle or something. And they're probably 20 or 30 men, and big men. And I'm walking across in a suit, and they sort of look, and I said, "Excuse me, gentlemen." And they all looked, and I thought this will be interesting. And they said, "Yes." I said, "I simply want to say thank you." And paused, and I said, "For what you do, you build big buildings. You build them hopefully on time and on budget, but safely, and it's not easy what you do." I said, "I've watched this building going up. There's cranes, there's people on the outside. Yes, there's all the laws of the scaffolding and all the health and safety, which is so important. But I just said, thanks for what you do, being great builders." And all of a sudden, the 30 of them sort of came towards me and said, "Thanks, mate."
Well,
And I
you've
said, "My
hit
pleasure."
a nerve with me there, David, because it's something that I advocate very strong for, is this overturning of what we call male privilege. Now, when we're looking at the world's infrastructure, that is probably populated by 95% men. That's men getting up, risking their lives to build stuff for us. And, when all the poles and wires go down in a hurricane or a flood or whatever it might be, that's men out there hooking it up in the middle of the night in the rain while we wake up in the morning and still have our hair dryers going. So another shout out there for men who are out there doing stuff, making the world turn around.
Yeah, and I've got to give a good mention for the ladies too, because I'm sure there are ladies on that site, but I spoke to a lady recently and she asked about the media, and I said, what did you say? I'm an engineer. I said, really? And she said, yes. And she said, we've got a lack of women applying for engineering. She said, they're most welcome. She said there are some very distinguished engineers, but she said, it's a great career. And I thought, okay. And, I saw, I was asked to nominate my top 10 women some time back for an article. And they said not direct family or anybody, but just women you network with who you think are achievers. Oh, it was so easy. And the journalist stopped me. He said, well, hang on, you're up to 12. And I said, is there a problem? And he said, a lot of people have said, can we think about it and we'll email you back. And I said, oh, no, not a problem. I can think of lots of great achievers.
Yes. Well, there you go. That's a great segue into what I wanted to talk with you and Ken about, and that's the Order of Australia. That you're both involved with in different respects.
It's
okay.
Ken's pointing at me.
Did you?
Yes, it's an amazing the Order of Australia Association.
And is that how you know each other, or you?
No.
From way back, radio really,
Yes, yeah.
But then obviously with the Order of Australia in 2006. I was awarded an Australian honour, and it wasn't for anything to do with media.
What was it for?
It was to do with nursing, because I was chairman of Royal District Nursing Service in an honorary sense. It was to do with heritage, because I was the chairman of the Mount Macedon Memorial Cross Committee, Memorial Cross Trustees. We thank you to Mr. Grollo who rebuilt the Mount Macedon Cross. So it was nursing, heritage, emergency services, because I was working with the Victoria Police in an honorary sense. It was called Metropolitan Ambulance Service then. It's now Ambulance Victoria, and the Metropolitan Fire Brigade. So it was heritage, nursing and emergency services. And so that was 2006, and I received an OAM. And then 2007, I was asked to go on the board of the Order of Australia Association, and that's everybody who has an Australian honour, and certainly that is extended to our friends with Imperial Honours, and then obviously all the other awards that go on Australia Day and Queen's Birthday. And it's terrific. It's a lot of like-minded people, and I hope you don't mind me saying this on your program, Raylene and Ken, but some people think it's elitist. It's not. Because when I had the privilege of sitting in Government House, it's in alphabetical order, and on my right-hand side was one of the leading surgeons of Australia, and on my left-hand side was a dairy farmer who'd had an amazing story about pasteurisation, and it went in so many areas.
I think they were an Australian story.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. They just struck a...
and I was sitting there, and then as I went through all the various people for their commendations of what it had done, it's people from all walks of life.
Absolutely, yes.
And all age groups, and all contributing in the way people say, how do you get an Australian honour? And I said, when you nominate somebody, just think of above and beyond.
Yeah.
Not simply what they do day to day, but above and beyond.
Yeah, very interesting what you've just said, David, because our program is to do with health, and the things that you got your honour for, really basically nursing, emergency services, and what was the other one?
Heritage.
I mean, all these things really are basically to do with health in some way or another.
Yeah, and I was pleased because all in an honorary sense. So my paid career has been predominantly media, and then obviously some boards that I'm on now. But, it gave me an opportunity because the media, the local papers, and obviously 3AW at the time were all wanting to interview me. And I said, great, but I actually don't want to talk about me. I want to give a mention to all these other organisations I'm involved with. And then it gave me that opportunity to talk about people like Bib Stilwell, who was one of my mentors, Bill Collins, the race caller, was one of my mentors. People like that, Brigadier Ian Gilmore, an amazing man. Unfortunately, Brigadier Gilmore, Bib Stilwell, Bill Collins, all no longer with us, it saddens me every day because, boy, if you could put some of those people... Bruce Matheson.
Do you ever want to just pick up the phone just to get some mentoring,
Yeah.
If only.
it was just... Well, Bib Stilwell was the first person who said, David, I want you on a board, a trust or a foundation within the next year. And I was 18. I didn't even know what board, trust or foundation meant. And he said, I want you to do something. And he said it will enhance your network, enhance your lifestyle. And then some of the people who are with us today, Bruce Matheson. And as soon as you say that name, people go, Bruce Matheson, Pokey King. Yes, he does have an interest or own many, 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 many hotels across Australia. Yes, they have poker machines. But I met him when he had his very first hotel, the Macedon Family Hotel, a Port Melbourne boy who had to fight physically to keep his family together because his dad died when he was young. And he wasn't given any money. There wasn't a silver spoon. He made it, and he's had lots of ventures since, from mining to pharmaceutical to retail to you name it. But when I first met him, he said, all you've got to do is work hard. Love what you do and work hard. And work is 7 days a week. And I looked at him, and here was this man who just worked non-stop. And, his son's now basically running the business, but he's still involved. But I talk about him, and I've been in audiences where people go, oh, yeah. And then when you tell the story, they go, wow, we didn't know this.
Some of them start from scratch with nothing and become multi-millionaires. I suppose Lindsay Fox would be a good example.
Another person who's done extremely well. Well, Bruce did start from nothing because when I met him, he said, do you do discos? This was in 1974. And I said, of course I do. The answer was I'd never done a disco in my life. And so I went down to Myer and bought $30 worth of records and then hired a couple of turntables from the technicians at work. And he picked me up in his car. He had a Ford Marquis. I thought I'd love to own one of those when I grow up. And I thought he was kidnapping me. He drove me all the way to Macedon. And he said, I bought this hotel. And he said, but I've mortgaged my life. He said, I had a little engineering business. And he made the casters on the bottom of the chairs we're sitting on now, the little rollers. And that was his business. And he said, I thought I would get into the pubs. So when we arrived, he said, I'm going to cook the schnitzel. I'll do the door. We'll give everybody a raffle ticket. I'll do the bar. And he said, you play the music. And I said, you're going to do all those things? He said, well, I can't afford any staff.
Tell me some of those albums that you bought. You must remember. Did you go to Brash's?
I think I bought Happening Hits 71. I bought Born to Be Alive by Patrick Hernandez, The Village People, Nutbush City Limits. I mean, you just put them on and they just dance. But Bruce was a worker and always was a worker. Probably still is. He lives up on the Gold Coast now, but self-made, but some great ethics. And part of my philosophy is, you'll know who your friends are. They'll be there when it's good and it's bad. And he's had some shocking times and some great times.
Well, that's the recipe for success is hard work and love what you're doing.
Exactly, love what you're doing. Somebody asked me last night, they said, wow, aren't you just exhausted and, it must really get to you sometimes with what you do, working with, especially around suicide. And I said, there's just this burning light in me. Like every day it's what I get up for and there's nothing that will stop me. And, probably it is to the detriment of my physical health that I'm so involved in what I do. But I feel so grateful that I found, well, it's always been part of me, but, really got to get paid for some of what I do as well. That sustains the rest of my life. I feel very fortunate.
Well, I'll talk to you, Ken, as if Raylene's not sitting in the studio, and Ken knows very well what we're lacking at the moment with the Order of Australia is quality nominations, particularly for women. Not a lot of women are nominated, or the referees need to follow through. Younger people, there's people who've done so much in life, like Raylene, as a young person, has done so much in life. So just to complete the chapter on the Order of Australia Association, if you know someone who has contributed above and beyond. And you think, gee, would they ever accept it? The nomination goes in with 3 up to 5 referees, and then in the end, if it goes through the Secretariat in Canberra, you get a letter. Would you be okay with a police check? And everybody goes yes. And then to receive it, and it's not for the person, it's for their extended family or extended network. So if you know any people, and particularly there's a push on for younger people and for females too, because when you look at the list of names on Australia Day and Queen's Birthday, it's not male dominated, but the percentages are greater in the male category.
I'm happy to say that on the committee I'm on for the eastern suburbs, we have a predominance of ladies on the committee, which is great.
Well done.
And they're all high achievers.
You do, because I've been to one of those events with you. I remember.
So you know.
So Ken could have been Sir Ken, because before the honours were changed to Australian honours, if you received it, you would have become Sir. So there were lots of sirs.
Yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it?
You look like a Sir Ken.
Oh, thank you. I don't know.
Well,
but
that's a really good message, and something, because Australia Day coming up and Queen's Birthday as well, mid next year. So I just saw lovely Mark Marsh has the addition of a spotlight on an unsigned artist featuring a local band. And that sounds great because, number one, he's supporting unsigned bands, but also in our community as well.
Mark, you must write down, if you're listening now in the other studio or in prep area, Amistat, Amistat. I mentioned before on air that I was at Queen Victoria Market last Friday. All of a sudden there were these buskers, 3 gentlemen, 2 of them are twins, not identical, and a man playing the cello, one of them playing electric piano, the other playing guitar. There were the students from school who were probably 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right up to people in our age group. They were amazing. I have never, ever seen buskers who could play, sing, but Raylene, you would have loved it because so much of what you do comes from the heart. Their power to communicate with the people, not about give me money or buy a CD, but talking about their stories, how they got together, why they do it, thanking the people, all the songs they write themselves. And it was remarkable. And I was the only person in a suit. And they sort of, later on I went over and they said, oh, and we noticed you applauding, thank you, sir. And I said, I came back. So I was there and then I came back and heard them for another 20 minutes. Amistat, and they released a song that day on, what do you call it, Spotify?
Yes.
Or I don't know what those things are. iTunes.
Yeah.
But it's called Coward. And so
I know Mark will be writing this down. We don't have cameras in this studio, so we can't see it, but I'll ensure that Mark gets that
Amistat,
information.
yes.
they have CDs to sell.
They had CDs. That's how they make their money. Obviously, people listen and then buy the CD. But they're doing a tour up the East Coast, and they just enjoy playing and singing. And they're going to Chapel Off Chapel, another lovely venue to try and sort of build up a following. But I tell you what, I could just see them in some really classy venues, but just delightful young men, 27 years of age.
Do you know what I love about these conversations? That they have no idea this conversation is happening on air. And that's the beauty of human beings as well, is that you never know how you're being spoken about. Sometimes you might not want to hear. But just going back to the Order of Australia thing, when do people have to have their nominations in for next
Anytime. You can nominate 365 days a year.
Oh, right, okay.
Go to itsanhonour.gov.au. You can download it from the website, and that'll send you to another one. But any time of the year, any day, any hour.
Yes.
But I would suggest that if you're the nominator, read it carefully and just think above and beyond. Then, particularly with the referees, let them know they must follow up, because so many nominations go in and the referees don't follow up, so nothing happens.
And I'm feeling rather in awe of my studio company today, co-hosting with the very popular 3WBC darling, Ken Lyons. And we are talking to true radio royalty, David Mann, 3AW's Mann About Town.
Little overstated, thank you.
No, I like doing it. Just sounds good. It's a nice intro. Now,
thank you.
David and Ken, I know, listened into part of this show as well. I recently had Susan Cooper on my show, who's the CEO of Entertainment Assist, who is the organisation where you sit as chairperson.
Correct. It was an initiation that took me by surprise, because in January I was asked by Julie Raff, who is one of my top 10 ladies of achievers. She is the finance director for Village Roadshow, or CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and a lady called Kendra Reid from AKA, and a very, very clever lady with marketing, international acts, international shows, international relationships between, theatrical producers. And they said, we'd like to meet you and have a chat to you. And I said, oh, sure. I said, if it's to do with AW marketing, that's somebody else now. If it's to do with this or that. And they said, no, we're not going to tell you what it's about, but we'd like to see you. I went, oh, okay.
Oh, gee, that could have been anything.
So we sat down
Bop you on the head in an alleyway.
in a coffee shop, and they said, have you heard of Entertainment Assist? And I said, is it like Support Act, which is involved with the entertainment industry? And they said, it is, but we have a focus on mental health and well-being. I said, oh, that's interesting. And so we had an hour chat, and they said, we, the board, unanimously would like you to come on board as a board member, and automatically we'd like you to be chairman. I said, wow. I said, that's
Need
interesting.
another one of those.
In a
Thanks lot,
governance
yeah.
sense, that doesn't normally happen. But I said, look, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I want a month to go and ask people about it and talk to entertainers and talk to the type of people that should know about it. Do they know about it? So to cut the long story very short, I did that. I had a month and I went back to them. I said, you know what? The answer is yes, because not a lot of people knew about Entertainment Assist. Everybody knew about the mental health and well-being of entertainers, and we've got 5 entertainers a week attempt suicide. And fairly close
That we
to
know
me,
of course.
it had happened to a few people. In fact, a person who was very, very, very close to me in a work sense took his own life, and I will never get over that, neither will a lot of people, but very, very sad. So the timing, and I disclosed to them, I said, look, this is something that I care about. And the big reason, Raylene and Ken, when you think of entertainment, you think of the actors, the musicians, you think of, perhaps the singer-songwriters. But do we think about the truck driver, the guy who drives the truck with all the equipment? Do we think about the AV engineers? Do we think about the person selling the program in the theatre? Do we think about the radio person?
Well, it's funny because when I was sitting here with Susan in this very studio, I said, well, I'm clearly not in that industry myself. She said, you're actually sitting in a radio studio presenting radio. You're absolutely there. But, I'm in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and the entertainment industry is so diverse, and there are so many people. And when you think about it, there are some really challenging areas. There's a lot of shift work. All of a sudden, somebody's on tour with a big act for 3 months, then they have no work. There's, and I won't hide it, there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's, in some workplaces, bullying, there's domestic violence, there's marital problems. There's all these other good things that you bring pleasure to so many people, or you're skilled in your part of entertainment. But it's as important as the person who thinks they've got the most menial job up to the superstars.
Well, that's right. And Susan described that really well, David and Ken, because she said it's like being in a family. You're in a family for this extended period of time, and you're travelling around wherever you are, and then all of a sudden it's disbanded and you're left, potentially without a job. And that's a really vulnerable space to be, because the people that were your supports for so long all of a sudden have gone off to make other families with other people.
Yeah. And it was a discovery, and thank you to the Pratt Foundation, Sam Lipsky, Ian Allen, Eloise Pratt, who heads up the foundation, Mrs. Pratt, Jean Pratt, and to Village Roadshow, Mr. Burke, Mr. Kirby, people like that. They support it as patrons. Harold Mitchell, another great Australian. So we're lucky we've got some people. Paul Wheelton, who I'm sure you've met, Raylene. He and his wife Angela support it in a patron sense. But what really brought it home to me was I went, I travelled to Ballarat. John Farnham was doing a concert at Ballarat. And I went backstage.
I thought you were going to say John Farmer was.
No. And met
was
Glenn.
it a farewell performance?
Another one.
One of them. Oh, he's fantastic. He is fantastic.
At farewell performances.
And Glenn Wheatley, Glenn has been there for the good times and the bad times. That I had a chat, and when I was mentioning some of the names, they went, wow. And so then I started going to concerts and to places and just meeting the entertainers and some of the support staff backstage. And I'm happy to admit right now, it's been an emotional journey for me. I've been in tears more than once talking to people, and some of the biggest names in this industry have come out to me and said, look, it hasn't been easy. And when they get to that awful, awful line and they look at you and they say, look, we've been in such a bad space, we thought of taking our life, this will be great. And we're not, Beyond Blue does an amazing job, Black Dog does an amazing job, there's lots of people who do amazing jobs. We're just getting the industry to actually know they should put the programs in place. And Susan Cooper, who you interviewed, she's putting together something now on behalf of Entertainment Assist, which is the Australian Australian Alliance of Wellness in Entertainment. And so she's now travelling around Australia, bringing together all the parties of everybody who represents people, and some from the union side who have been absolutely supportive. I know, unions get a bit of a bashing here and there, but I've got to say the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, through to all the other industry bodies getting together to say, we need to make a difference. We need to have programs in place that'll be delivered by professionals.
Yes.
We don't deliver the programs. We do a thing called intermission, but the bigger picture. And it goes from the collateral to the apps to the people and the counsellors and all that. So that is taking off. It was launched during Mental Health Awareness Week.
Yes.
And it's got a long way to go.
Well, I know, David, that Entertainment Assist have now advertised for forums all around Australia, and it looks like anybody can attend. Typically, it would be people that have an interest in that space, whether it's from a practitioner perspective or an entertainment perspective. But yeah, I read that I think there's one in St Kilda here on the 28th of November or something.
4th of December.
4th of December.
4th of December at the Alex Theatre. So anybody associated with entertainment, they don't have to be the entertainer, can go along. There's a forum, I think it's 2:30 till 4 o'clock. And free of charge, you go along and just see where it's at. It's
like a round table discussion.
Yeah.
Without the round table, of course. I think when people talk about round table discussions, they expect one to be there, but generally not.
So the Alex Theatre, there's another man, Alex Vass, who's been supporting it all the way through. And he was the original producer, Ken, of Topol in Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh, really?
So he's a theatrical producer. He owns the Alex Theatres. So it's very important. Entertainment Assist
I saw you there just recently.
Yes.
Not long ago.
Been there a few times, and it's consuming, but I'm loving it, and hopefully we can make a difference. And if we save one life, or if we put somebody in a better place, it will be all worthwhile. And the thing for people to remember, there's only 1.5 staff. So there's Susan, and there's Julia Edwards, and that's it. And we're getting a little bit of support for the back end to make sure we can do more.
Yeah.
But that's what it's about.
That's the beauty of social media these days, is it can look like a lot more and get out to a lot more people that really need that information. And if anyone wants to hear the interview that I had with Susan Cooper, they can just look up my YouTube channel. So you just type in YouTube and Rae Bonney. Do not type in Raylene because you won't get anything. But if you type in Rae Bonney in YouTube, you'll be able to hear that interview amongst many others, including this one probably in the next few weeks if you missed it all or want to hear it all again. Now, Ken, I know that you're busting to ask David about some of the old glittering stars of entertainment.
Yes, well, it's certainly, David, you have at some stage of your career in media, and I think it was probably the time you were at 3AW, you had the opportunity of meeting some very, very big stars, and I have heard you talk about them. I thought you might mention a few. I know, to give you a clue, I think one of them was Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, amazing. I had the pleasure of having dinner with Sammy Davis Jr., Liza Minnelli, my wife and I, and only 4 other people. So there were 6 of us sitting on one side of the table, and there were 3 chairs on the other side of the table. And I said to the people hosting it, I said, who's coming along to dinner? And they said, well, no surnames and no occupation of what you do, but Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli and Sammy Davis Jr. And I did exactly that. I laughed and said, I don't think that'll happen. And they said, no, true. They are coming along. They're in town to do the main event. And anyway, a lady walked in and she said, "My name is Dorothy. I'm Mr. Sinatra's personal assistant. He's not feeling well tonight, but he looks forward to seeing you at the concert tomorrow night. But now I present Miss Liza Minnelli and Mr. Sammy Davis Jr." And they walked in and I went, oh my goodness. The first thing I did was stand up, and the first thing Sammy Davis said to me, "Please sit down, you're too tall." And we had an amazing evening with them. Absolutely so sad when Sammy passed away. But Paul Anker, who I've met and chatted to,
Who wrote My Way, I think, didn't he?
My Way, She's a Lady. Paul Anker's written so many songs, and he said to me, because I said, "Mr. Anker, you're one of the great performers." He said, "Thank you." He said, "But the greatest performer ever." And I thought he was going to say Frank Sinatra. He said Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
And I went, wow. I suppose a summary, because some of these people, I'm looking at Raylene, she wouldn't know their names. Victor Borger, funniest man I've ever met in my life.
Oh, he was brilliant.
Never swore. And that's why I watch these comedians who can do things and get the best laugh without any language. Victor Borger never even said the word B-U-M. The funniest man. Every night the concert hall was packed out. Every night everybody was in tears. And he said he would only retire when he couldn't play the piano, because a brilliant pianist.
Oh, yes.
And when
if
the
he ever played anything fully.
When the arthritis took over, that's when he stopped. But one of the funniest men I've ever met. Probably the lesson in life, Charles Aznavour, the French singer. Mm-hmm. I used to go to Rest Point all the time and compare down there.
Rest Point. Is that still there?
His song.
She was his big hit.
Yes.
Huge hit. And Rest Point Casino was the first casino in Australia.
Is it still there?
Absolutely.
All right.
The big tower and everything. And they had international acts all the time. And Dennis Smith was the promoter. And I'd fly down and stand there in a three-piece suit and a velour tie and MC. But Charles Aznavour was terrific, because I'll do the very short version. I took a tape recorder down. They said, "You're going to be with Charles Aznavour." I said, "I'm flying down with Ansett with him from Melbourne." And they said, "Do an interview. We'll pump it out around the Macquarie network." So I said, okay. So I had this big Nagra tape machine, which weighed a ton. And I went up to his room in the tower, the Rest Point Tower, sat down, turned the machine on, and I looked at him and I said, "Mr. Aznavour, I can't do this. I've never interviewed a star." I think I was 19 years of age. And I can't do the French accent, but he said, "David, turn the machine off." I thought, oh, this is the worst career move ever. And then he gave me one of those life lessons. He said, "David, the man who flew us down on the plane, yesterday." I said, "Yes, Ansett, the pilot." He said, "He does a good job." I said, "Yes, he does. Very clever to be a pilot." He said, "The lady who brought this cheese and the port," he had a little port bottle and a cheese platter. He said, "She does a good job." He said, "Tonight on the stage, you will talk about me and bring me out on stage, being the MC." And I said, "Yes, I'm quite happy about doing that, being the MC for you." He said, "You will do a good job." But he said, "Always remember, there is no such thing in life as a star. We all do our job well." So the lady who was servicing the room, or the airline captain, or the MC. So now I look at people, and I've watched Prime Ministers walk through the doors of AW over the years, and I always think, it doesn't matter whether you're tipping open the bins in the city and, doing a great job keeping our city clean and tidy, or whether you're the Prime Minister. They're not stars, they're people. They're people, and everybody should be respected. And Charles Aznavour put that print in my brain. And then he said, "You understand? Now turn the tape on." It was the worst interview in the history of radio. But
But what a great lesson that was, wasn't it?
Oh, it was just amazing.
Obviously, a very deep thinking man.
Oh, and he was like the number one star. She, Ken, which you
Yes,
remember, was on top of the
wonderful.
charts.
Yeah.
And then other people, and Raylene in your space. And once again, his daughter knows I say this publicly, because one of the greatest opportunities I had was with Johnny O'Keefe.
Oh.
And they said, "Johnny O'Keefe is performing at the Macedon Hotel. So you pick him up, you're responsible, get him up there, get him back." And I didn't even drive. I didn't have a driver's license. So Dennis Smith had a lady, Jill Vaudrey, and she drove a Jaguar, and I thought, this is pretty good. And in those days, the old Melbourne Motor Inn in Flemington Road
Yes.
was sort of pretty special. It was the Southern Cross and the old
The
Melbourne
Southern Cross,
Motor Inn.
yeah.
I know that place well.
So anyway, we went there to pick him up. I knew the room, so I just went straight up, knocked, no, nothing. Then knocked again, nothing. Came down to the hotel manager and said, "Look, I'm here for Mr. O'Keefe." And he said, "Oh yes, you know the room." And I said, "Yeah, but there's no response. Is he having an early meal or something?" He said, "No." Anyway, he said, "Look, if you sign this, I can open the door." It was the days you had keys, not swipes. So he opened it up, and there was the great man who was just the Ants Pants. I mean, the rock and roller, the great JOK.
I saw him perform.
And he was on the bed, and he'd soiled himself. He was out to it, and I thought he's dead, and I panicked. I thought, "Oh my God, this is awful." And anyway, what had taken place is a mixture of all different substances. So we managed to get him, at least Compass, to take him out the back way, put him in the car, put another shirt on, which he soiled again by the time we got up there. And all he kept saying to me was, "Don't use any adjectives. Don't use any adjectives." Because I was going to say, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Macedon Family Hotel, on behalf of Bruce Matheson and the entire team here, we're proud to welcome the great, the one and only JOK," because he was one of the greatest. And I thought, this is going to be the worst thing in my life. Got him out. Fortunately, Macedon was cold at that time of the year. He sort of just said, "Don't use any adjectives." And I sort of looked at the band, and they must have known. And he went up on stage. He hardly said a word in between songs. He wasn't slurring. He just did song after song after song. He collapsed into my arms at the end of it and said, "Get me out of this effing place," because I don't think it was, talking about the hotel, but just get me out of here. Went to sleep in the car, got him back to the hotel, and shortly after that he passed away. Not that night, and it was so sad, and his daughter and I shared the story together, and you can have everything going for you and yet nothing. In another sense too, another great was Mary Hardy.
Yes.
Funniest lady, Penthouse Club going, 3AW with the great Peter James, everything, but one of the loneliest people I've ever met. One of the loneliest people. And but then, the other greats, Tom Jones, MC Tom Jones for years and years and years. Hates it. He hates that. He said, "Don't ever mention that, David." He said, I don't need it. I want to sing and I want to perform. And so I'd never say, "Oh, remember."
Who wants somebody's undies thrown at you? Like, really, it's not
and
nice.
So he was Tom Jones there, now Sir Tom Jones.
Can I tell you a little story about Tom Jones myself?
Please. When
Rose was born, and Rose, my beautiful daughter, who's almost 23, she was about 4 weeks old, and Tom Jones was appearing at Southland Shopping Centre. And I said to Rose at 4 weeks old, "I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you and I didn't use the word star, but the first superstar that in your life." So I took her to Southland, got there really early, got front of stage, and I held her up like this because she was tiny and said, "That's Tom Jones." And so she saw him. She'll never remember it, but she did.
He was great. And he sings.
I think he said something to me like, something about, the throwing of panties. You're going to throw a baby at me or something.
Nana Muscuri, another lovely lady.
Yes.
A lady who led the way, leading glasses, wearing glasses. Yeah. That was unheard of. And people always say, "Who's the greatest entertainer you've seen?" So obviously we talked about Sammy Davis before, but somebody a lot of people mightn't remember, Lovelace Watkins.
Yes.
Dorset Gardens. Yes. Wally Elms owned it, one of the venues where entertainers would go out at Croydon.
I used to go there when Di Trask was there.
Yes, the wonderful Diana Trask. Yeah. And he performed for probably close to 2 hours. Then he put the mic down and he said, "Have you all enjoyed it?" And they said, yes, the whole place went mad. And then he did about another hour without the microphone. And he's doing Old Man River, and he was a huge man in stature. Could he sing? And a bit of a lad too.
And you're in very good hands with Rae Bonney and Ken Lyons, joined in the studio by media darling David Mann. Not just a pretty radio face. Well,
it's definitely not a pretty radio face.
There's many, many faces to this man about town. Now, David, we have talked a little bit about the many hats, the many chairs, the many faces, the many boards that you get across. The one question we haven't asked you is why?
Make a difference, help some people. I have a skill set that hopefully can be used, and then I surround myself with people who have other skill sets. So
Now, when you talk about skill set, we all know that you started off as the copy boy at AW.
the office boy.
Yes, the office boy. So when you talk about skill set, would you call that a skill set of life experiences or?
Definitely. It was one of the best jobs you could have because I could decide by delivering everybody's mail what I'd like to do. So would I want to be a journalist? Would I like to be a producer? Would I like to be on air? Would I like to be a technician? Would I like to be in accounts? Would I like to be in scheduling area?
Because you didn't go on to do formal education, did
No,
you?
no. I finished
Apart from Kerrymuir High.
matriculated at Blackburn High,
Blackburn High.
and that was it. And but I think that that was a great job. Yes, that's a life skill. But also, people say, "What's your skill set?" I say, "Well, promotions, marketing, public relations, crisis management." And my negatives are not IT at all. Don't even talk about IT to me. But the boards, if you can surround yourself with good people, and whether it's a board member or the chairman, it doesn't matter. It's a team effort. And so, I love the Victoria Police Blue Ribbon Day Community Council that is celebrating and remembering is the biggest word, celebrating the people who are working today to say thank you for what you do in Victoria Police, but remembering those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So 29th of September is a very special day. Chairman of Victoria Police Blue Ribbon Foundation, so that's the overall body. We mentioned Queen Victoria Market, loving that. I love Chisholm. I was approached to go on Chisholm Institute.
Yeah.
Now, there's 35,000 students, 7 campuses, and one of the other things I say in life, if people stayed in education for a bit longer, it would be a better world. And I just love it. It's a challenge. We're rebuilding Frankston. We've started a hair and beauty academy in town. And
Do you know I've spoken at an event at the Chisholm Frankston campus?
oh, okay.
Yeah, many years ago with Beyond Blue.
Yeah.
And it was a really good initiative because, and again, I'm just going to segue in and out a little bit, but did you know the amount of men or boys that are dropping out of higher education these days that don't complete higher education is becoming a really, really serious issue?
Yes, and we're aware of that, and we're aware of, too, the overseas component coming here. I mean, our universities do very, very well. They have a huge overseas component of people studying here. But I love Chisholm. One of the ones that is very much entertainment is the production company, and that's Mrs. Jean Pratt's board. I'm on that board.
Yes.
And we produce 3 shows a year, Ken Mackenzie Forbes and Rachel Taylor and the team. And they're bringing theatre with big names like, of recent times, Todd McKenney, Marina Pryor, just to name a couple quickly. And we bring in all younger talent to work with these people. Nancy Hayes was in a production recently, and make it affordable theatre.
So what sorts of productions?
Oh, Hello Dolly, Jesus Christ Superstar, Dusty the Musical, things like that. West Side Story we've done, the Boy from Oz, a whole lot of theatre that's not coming in to run for a year like Book of Mormon or the Bodyguard or things like that. But this recent one we've just had was 11 shows, State Theatre, the Melbourne Arts Centre, which is just a magnificent complex.
Yeah.
So the production company is there to bring in quality theatre at affordable prices with great stars and younger talent, and I love it. And Mrs. Pratt, have either of you met Mrs. Jean Pratt?
No.
She's an amazing lady.
And she won't mind me saying she's 82 years of age.
Yeah.
She chairs the board. She goes through the agenda, and she's on Carlton Football Club board. She's obviously on the Visi board because her son, now that unfortunately her husband Richard passed away, Anthony is leading a massive company. It is huge, worldwide company.
Yes.
Not Australia. We're talking America, the whole lot. And she inspires me. She's got sciatica, and she stands at the steps and says, "Welcome to the theatre." She says, "Hello, my name's Jean Pratt," as if she needs to tell people who she is. And she welcomes everybody, and she sees every performance, the matinees and whatever. She had to go to Israel recently to do a major function, so it's one of the first shows that she's actually missed. But she was there for opening night, and then she hosts a reception. So I'm really enjoying that. The Mount Macedon Cross is very much something I'm proud that we've managed to rebuild and maintain the maintenance. And I say, Mr. Grollo, I don't muck around with words. We put together a trust, and I think we had a couple of $1,000s in the kitty, and it was going to cost $1 million. to rebuild. So there were,
Yeah.
it had cyclone fencing around it. It had been hit by lightning, the fires, the sleet, the hail and the snow. And Mr. Grollo rebuilt it to the exact same size. He said, if I put tiles again, it will fall down again. But he said, I'll make it look like tiles and it'll stand longer than the pyramids. And he said he could have built the pyramids quicker because he had all these regulations and things he had to do. But to he and Reno and the Grollo family, they built it. So I love that. And yeah, so there's probably about 7 boards and then the Ministerial Small Business Council and about 8 other committees. Oh, see, now I have a pager. That's interesting, isn't it? Look
Oh,
at that.
really? Did that go off, did it?
My page has just gone off.
Was it say, David Mann, stop talking? It says.
No, it's another message. I always go for the pager, but no, there we are. I'll tell you what it reads. Here we go. This is CFA State Agency Commander. For your information, tomorrow's been declared a day of total fire.
Wow.
Oh, first
ban
one.
for Mallee between 00.01 to 23:59. CFA State Agency Commander. There we are.
Okay, so you heard it first on
Yes.
94.1 FM.
There it is. So I still, and the involvement with obviously Ambulance Victoria and
Harking back to Richard Pratt, now there's another instance of somebody starting from nothing.
yes, and he really did, and you know he was ahead of his time again. But also, people go, oh, it was Mr. Pratt. But Gene was involved from the very beginning, you know, with the paper. And Gene was a journalist and did a whole lot of other things. But they built the business up together, so it was paper. But now they're one of the biggest recyclers of recycling in America. And I think maybe a grand statement, but I think they recycle most of New York's waste. He was a very quiet man. I only met him a few times, but the saddest thing was I met him in the latter part of his life, and I acknowledged him at a function that was not his function, and he came up at the end and extended his hand. He said, "Thank you. There was no need for that, but thank you. I appreciate it." And that was the last time I saw Mr. Pratt alive.
Wow.
Yes, it was a sad finish in his life, actually.
Yeah.
It all happened.
And Raheen, Gene's residence has been preserved, and it will always be there, as I understand it, for the state. But a remarkable.
Magnificent old home, isn't it?
So look and listen for the production company series. We'll announce
Yes.
it early next year. There will be 3 productions, and I've got an idea of what they are. There's a lot of work. You have to get rights, and then you have to check who's doing it, and then you've got to find your stars, and then you've got to cast them. And
Can we
and
get
they-
some media passes, David? We might be able to do a bit of promotion on 3WBC.
I tell you, I'll talk to Ken McKenzie Forbes AM about that. Ken knows him, so but it's amazing. They only rehearse for 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks.
Yes,
So I
it's
go.
usually six weeks, usually.
And I go to the meet and greet, and they're there for 2 weeks. They put it all into their head, the choreography, the words, the singing, the dancing, and then they do 11 performances, all finished.
It's incredible.
Now, Ken's a performer and a very accomplished actor as well. In fact, John Farmer, our station manager here, he appears on ads, and he was in an audition last week, and he got called back for a second one for Booper. So watch out to see if
Hey,
he's...
John did.
Yeah,
Oh, good on him.
yeah.
So yes, the boards I love, and you asked the question why. Well, I think that as long as I can keep giving and work through sometimes the politics of different boards or the restrictions, the governance these days, you're liable. You've got to get it right.
Yes.
And there's a lot to keep learning.
Well, you're
about.
extremely vulnerable from that perspective, aren't you?
Absolutely. They can come and take your house if you get
Yes.
it wrong. And that's why, I speak up and say if I'm not happy with something, have it minuted and say it.
Yes.
So, David, if I can ask you a personal question,
Certainly.
are you thinking about the future? How things are going to go for you? I mean, you're a relatively young man now, but look into the future. What are your plans?
Keep working. I love working. I still work 7
Right,
days a week.
right.
Thank you for saying relatively young. I'm 62 years of age.
Well, that's young.
But I
You could
I
be my
like
son.
I like working. I like meeting people. I have responsibilities, so financially I've still got to earn a living. I can't do everything in a philanthropic sense, so I still do MC corporate events and things like that, which I like doing, and you always learn from those. Still love my radio involvement. The Man About Town, I'm probably on air 8-10 times a week. I'm filling in for a couple of programs over Christmas when people aren't available. So I still pop into AW, and do recordings and that, and the team there. And I must give AW a plug. Congratulations, because it's the #1 radio station. It's quite remarkable. We're an AM radio station, and it's just going ahead, and we've got 2 lots of owners. We have Fairfax and we have Macquarie. So a lot of it's Sydney-based. We've got Stephen Beers is the general manager in Melbourne, so he's running it and coordinating, with a lot of Sydney people. And they have initiatives. They have a great team, and on air, some of the best talent that I've ever heard. And I've worked with greats like Mr. Banks and Ormsby Wilkins and Claudia Wright. But I tell you what, the team today. And I talk about the 24-hour team. Yeah. Some people just talk about 5:30 till 5:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. Well, 6 p.m. till 5:30 a.m. There are some remarkable talents there.
Are you happy with where you are situated? I mean, the studios as against, say, Bank Street, Latrobe Street. I suppose.
Because I'm not politically correct, I love 382 Latrobe Street. That was a radio station, and there was the Bluestone Courtyard, and there were the studios didn't have windows, but it was a radio station. Bank Street, it was us, and it was a building, and now Media House is a big building. There's lots of people in it. There's a lot of the Age and NBN and people like that. And so
Media House, isn't it?
Media House, yeah. And it's an amazing building. And the thing, now
it's like
there's
the Titanic.
There's windows to the street, so you can actually see the weather and things like that. And very well built, but it's part of a big building. So you need something like that for times of today because of computers and security and infrastructure. But 382 Latrobe Street, I loved, and one of the treasured possessions I have. Simon Owens, thank you, a Box Hill boy. Simon Owens, who's the Nightline host with Philip Brady.
Does very well.
He and Ken Francis, they went to 382 Latrobe Street when it was being demolished, and they grabbed me a brick. And they put a beautiful plaque on this brick and said, this is something we think you should have. And the 1%ers mean a lot to me. So I walk past 382 Latrobe now, and I think it's the Australian Wheat Board or something, but I remember that alley and some of the dreadful things we did.
Oh, yeah. For the last 8 minutes of the show, you've been with us for almost 2 hours in the great company of Rae Bonney and Ken Lyons. We mashed up our shows today as we had a bit of a squabble about who would get the interview with the great David Mann, and, well, this was the result, so I think it was a smashing event. And I was going to ask David just before he leaves what's up next, but Ken handled that in the last segment. So thanks for that, Ken, getting across that.
Keep working.
It's been an absolute privilege to have you here, David, and because you are royalty as far as radio and as the media is concerned, and we're very privileged that you've given us the time today. Because having listened to the number of boards you're on and the number of things that you're interested in and the work that you put in, I don't know how you do it and still fit in something like a couple of hours with us. Well, so we say thank you.
Well, Ken, I say thank you to you and to Raylene. Community radio is such an important part of the infrastructure of the tapestry of Melbourne, if you like. I love my newspapers. I read our 3 local newspapers, the real papers every week, community newspapers. And community radio, I often say to people, if you get a chance and if you can introduce yourself to the station manager, and whether it's behind the scenes, just watching, or then perhaps progressing to helping with setting up a program and then to become the on-air talent. And they go, really? I go, it's so great because you learn all the etiquette of radio, when to speak, how to use the microphones, how to control things, levels, and then, doing research. And community radio leads to so many great people. If you ask so many of the people in radio now, everybody says, they started country radio. And I go, now there's so many community radio stations, that's great. But to you, Ken, for everything you've done in your professional career, pharmacy, through to all of the philanthropic things you do, and your program. Thank you for letting me be a part of it, and for your honour, well deserved for your Australian honour, And I know that you'll keep doing this forever because you love it.
Certainly for as long as I can.
And to Raylene, it's been an absolute pleasure. When Raylene said, well, I'll pop out, I said, oh, well, do a little bit. And she said, no, not a little bit. I want you there for the whole 2 hours. So, Raylene, you're quite remarkable. I'm sure all your listeners know what you do behind the scenes, but even... you don't have mobile phones in the studio, or you do, you have them on silent, but I know yours has gone off a couple of times with, I'll just say, crisis management.
Yes.
So people issues that Raylene is very much involved with, and it's 24 hours a day. It's 7 days a week. People who have issues, you need somebody there. So for what you do, but I know you love your broadcasting. You really get a kick out of it.
I do. I adore it. And it's people like you that have given me but actually both of you have been my broadcasting mentors. So
And
there
David,
you go.
before you go, perhaps you might just go back a little bit and talk about if we know somebody that you feel is deserving of an award like the OAM, do something about it.
Please. The website, I know they've updated.
I was going to nominate both of you actually, but you already have one. So
I know the website was it'sanhonour.gov.au, and if you go to that, it'll lead you to a new website. And all you need, it's not a big process. There's a nominator, and he or she really needs to know everything about you, and then 3 to 5 referees who need to be right on the ball. But please do it, because there are lots of people who they won't look for the recognition. It's not about them, but for their extended family and network, it makes such a difference. And it's an honour to have a post-nominal after your name. We wear the little badge and people go, oh, is that Rotary? I said, no, Rotary's great. That's not a Rotary badge, but that's an Order of Australia. And then when you explain it to them, they go, oh, okay. So, but thank you. And to station management here too, because there's a lot happens behind the scenes.
Yes.
Wonderful facility. I just think
Isn't
it's
it great?
fantastic. Here we are, the window to reception. People could sit there. You could put on a little afternoon tea or morning tea for listeners to watch you.
sometimes they do. We had Harrison Craig in here a few times. He's a friend of the show, and when Harrison comes in, everyone's out there.
What a story.
Yes.
And he doesn't mind saying it. I mean, he has a stutter.
Yes.
And he is such a great singer. And everybody just likes him because he's a nice person.
He's beautiful. He is beautiful. He comes in here and thanks me. It's all right, man, He's just gorgeous.
In the last minute, there's another story. I met a lady, Natalie Gauci, who in 2007
yes.
won Australian Idol. I hope I got the program
Yes.
right. She won it. Big star, relatively young age. Everything's happening for her. It's on television. She's won this biggest show. And then it all fell to pieces.
Yep.
And she went through a shocking, shocking time. I chatted to her and she's repositioned herself. She's got a life. She does mentoring. She does counselling. She does yoga. She does a whole lot of things. And she's this reborn person out of dreadful mental health issues.
Yes.
So she would be an interesting interview.
Well, we'll take that offline, shall we? And on that note, just as a final message, if anything that we've talked about today has brought up feelings for people, don't forget Lifeline, 131114. That's 131114. Suicide callback service, 1300 659 467. And of course, emergency services, David, 000. If you're really worried about somebody, you're not going to get into trouble by phoning 000. They're there to help. They're there for an emergency. So it's really important that we remember that.
And whenever you get a chance, thank our men and women of the emergency services and of the Defence Forces. They don't expect it, but the handshake or the smile or the verbal recognition is much appreciated.
It absolutely is. Well, we're going to let you go now.